What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, and welcome to my Holy Crusader build. Now, this is a dedicated Radiance build, and it is the final form of the build we used for the walkthrough. This thing is super fun. It can get in the fray and be a competent brawler. It's also an incredibly potent spellcaster. There's a lot of flexibility in how you want to play this. So either way, let's jump in and talk about the build. Now, as for our stats, the main stat here is going to be Radiance. We want to get that all the way up to 75, hit that high-end soft cap on it. Vitality, I'd suggest getting to at least 40 if you keep going. Take that up to 60, the second soft cap there. Endurance, once again, around 20-25, giving you plenty to roll. And then lastly, we need 20 Inferno. Now, the reason we need 20 Infernos for a specific weapon, we'll get into that later because you may not even want to go for that, but we'll talk about that when the time comes. As for our Lantern, I really like increased Soulflay stun duration on this, as well as damage to soul and regain Soulflay charge while in Umbral. This is a very, very long Soulflay stun, and it's going to allow us to just absolutely decimate the beefier enemies in the event that we want to get into melee and hit them, as opposed to casting. Now, talking about the weapon, the mainstay of this build is, of course, Pieda's Sword. Getting up to +5, this has an A- Radiance scaling. It has built-in smite, which is incredibly powerful, and an attack power that gets up to 399. Now, the 399 isn't too bad, especially if you're going to use this with a shield. This has very, very fast one-hands, as you can see. Even when we're two-handing it, we get wider sweeps that are a little bit slower, but despite the fact that it's a short sword, having this as your only primary weapon is incredibly potent, and it's actually what I used for the majority of the walkthrough and was clean sweeping my way through the game. Now, at the very, very end of the game, you can get the supplement to that, and that is going to be Elaine the Starved Sword. Now, by combining both of these and fully finishing the quest, if we do L1 and R2, we have a unique zone attack that is going to cause smite buildup as well as umbral damage. Very, very strong attack. Just, you know, let me go run and find an enemy to hit that with. I think we have a big guy right around the corner here. And I'm gonna soulflay him and show you just how much damage that thing is capable of doing. Hey, come on out. Let's go. Let's go. We're on the clock here. Get over here. So you can see that soulflay duration took out the entire health bar on the spike head, and we're all the way up in the Abbey. This is a late game zone. So very, very potent from a melee perspective. Besides that, the Exactor Scripture. Now, this is going to come from doing Dunmire's quest. This is going to be the best scripture in the game for Radiance builds. If you're only focused on Radiance, this is going to absolutely have the highest spell power available. It also comes with 5 slots, even though we're only going to take advantage of 4 of them as per a ring we have on. Now, as for the armor, I like the Sacred Resonance spell along with Sovereign Protector, Sacred Resonance, and then Sovereign. This gives a very Paladin-esque type look. Now, for the tinct we're using the Exemplar. There's a couple different tincts you could use here, but I think the Exemplar gives kind of like it's the closest to a true gold. And on top of that, the fact that the cape goes purple, man, something about gold with the purple. It's a very royal look. It's very cool looking on a paladin. Really, really like this fashion. And on top of that, looking across at the stats, this is some pretty beefy armor. You know, there's not a whole lot that's going to put more defense onto our character than what we're wearing right now. So we are very tanky, which is nice. Moving on from there, Hysteria Pendant. This is going to be a 20% increase to our spell power, which means our radiant spells are incredibly strong. We have the Mana Stone ring on to help regenerate our mana since we don't have infinite cast with this build. And then once again, the Barrage Boot giving us a additional 20% damage at the cost of 1 spell slot. Now, if you are going to go for the shield variant of this build, we can slot mana regen into our shield, and then instead we could drop off the mana ring and bring in the other route, giving us a flat 50% damage increase. If this is going to be the route that you're going, what I would suggest doing is something like the Sanctified Huntress Shield. This is going to get 3 diamond slots, and what you can do is basically back up the save and have a buddy dupe the rune for you to get access to 3 of the mana runes. Now, as far as I know, there is no way to farm these runes in the game. You're going to have somebody drop the rune, back it up, drop the rune, back it up. Hopefully they add it in, because being able to have multiple Nartoon runes is incredibly strong. Looking at the other rune configuration on stuff, we're just going to go for the Orymon runes pretty much across the board. These are the ones that increase Radiance and reduce Inferno. Over here, the same thing, but here I put the Shonan just to increase the elemental damage. But having access to 3 of the mana regens is very, very potent. Just to show how fast my mana comes back, we're gonna burn through a little bit of it real fast here. Now, looking over at our character, you can see the mana rate is incredibly fast going up. And what's nice here is just progressing, that mana is going to climb back up. So between encounters, you're going to have more than enough mana to where you're able to tackle the enemies that you're facing, get those hits off, take them on out. While it's not quite as powerful as endless casting, like Umbral is, it's still a very potent build. And I will say that while this doesn't have the same infinite casting that Umbral does, I actually think this build is capable of doing more burst damage because of the fact that we're able to stack our lightning spell as well as use Luminous Blast. These 2 spells together are going to allow us to put out an immense amount of damage incredibly fast. When I fought Light Reaper at the very end of this game with this build, I actually managed to burst him so fast that he actually didn't get to go into his second phase. It still triggered anyway, triggered with him at 0 health, which was kind of funny to see. But super strong build, just able to put out, you know, immense amounts of damage like that. Definitely not something that can be understated. Talking about our spells here, Piercing Light, this is going to be the upgrade to Radiant Flare. It also pierces through enemies, which is super nice. Lucent Beam. This is going to be one of the first major spells that we get that really starts to ramp this build up and helps it to shine. Now, a lot of people misuse this. They're trying to use it, and they're hitting the button, and they're like, why isn't my beam working? Well, it's because it's a channeled spell. You need to hold the trigger down to use Lucent Beam, but when you do that, Lucent Beam is incredibly strong. One of probably the highest just single target DPS spells in the game. You know, anything that's like trash like this is just going to melt instantly. If I'm up against something that's a little bit bigger. Get a knight. I think there's a knight up ahead. It's also super good against dogs because holy damage has some kind of advantage against enemies that are blocking. So when those dogs are pretending to block because of their helmet, it allows you to insta-give them, which is super cool. Besides that, we have Blessed Reflections, which is from Pieta. This isn't bad. It's rather expensive, so I don't use it a lot. But it does fulfill a slot. It can be useful in some cases, but feel free to swap this out for anything you like more. And then lastly, Aureus' Judgment, which we actually get here in the Abbey from talking to Stoneman, and this is going to be one of the best DPS spells in the game. Just an incredibly potent spell. The fact that we can multicast this, and with each cast it's going to create its own instance of lightning. So if we cast this up a couple times, you can see it's just boom, 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 boom. And you can see it also tracks over 2 additional enemies. So on a boss, what I would do is I'd cast that up multiple times, pop a Mana Stone cluster, and then immediately go into the Lucent Beam, and whatever I was fighting would just end up kind of melting. So very strong build in that regard. It's just, you know, that kind of damage is just outrageous. So just showing the Lucent Beam here and what that can do. Boom, 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 boom. He's dead. Holy Rays of Fire. Super busted, super strong. And the other thing that I really like a lot about Aureus' Judgment is this is a fantastic spell for taking down enemies that you don't want to deal with otherwise. So like this guy right here. You know, nobody likes fighting those things. Like, oh, it's a Bellman. Man, I don't want to fight a Bellman right now. We're just going to cast one of those. And we can just chill here. And like, yeah, he's waking up, but by the time he gets over to us, he's going to be dead. We'll throw up a second one just to speed things up. And look at this. Look how insane this is. We're just chilling back here. We don't even need to engage with his ass. We're just like, you know what? I'm going to hang out back here. The lightning is going to hurt you. Now, obviously, as we're casting, our bleed meter is building up. But to be honest, nothing's going to catch up to us, so it ain't going to matter. They're all going to die, and we are just going to cakewalk our way to victory. Talking about some other stuff with this build, it is worth having just some mana stones on, to be honest, just because so that way if you're waiting for the mana to regen, you'll be fine. With that being said, the majority of time I was playing this build in the walkthrough, I only had the single Notchman rune as well as the mana ring, so 2 levels of regen versus 3 levels of regen, such as how I have now. And even then, that was still pretty nice. I used a mana stone here and there, typically during heavy burst encounters when I really needed a mana. But even then, just having that one rune alongside the mana regen build, that's still very powerful. Just having one ring and one rune, it's still going to keep your mana up enough to where it's not going to be a really big concern. And then, like I said, even having just the one Pieta sword, the single Pieta sword still does a lot of damage. And in an instance where we need to do even more damage, we can capitalize on the soul flay to yank an enemy out and just kind of take them down. So very, very potent build. You know, this is a late game area. I guess similar to the last video, we can go and mess up some of the stuff near the final zone real fast just to show how it handles the castle. Like I said, I think the other build I do think is a stronger caster, only because it's infinite casts. But if you're looking for the amount of burst damage you can do, I think this has the potential to outclass it. Because of the combination of Lucid Beam and Aureus' Judgment. When put those two together, you're able to really, really push down an enemy fast. So, for example, I'll pack the two of those on him, and you can do that to anything, and you're just gonna melt enemies with it. It's very quick with the amount of damage you're doing. You're able to push out those lightning bolts. You're able to push out the beam. And I really like the beam for clearing out large groups of trash. Like clearing out armies of withered is probably one of the coolest uses of the build. So actually, instead of fighting here at the castle, this build's already busted. Y'all have seen that. I just want to go somewhere and show you what it can do when we're like surrounded with trash. So we're gonna go to let's see. Let's warp to Shrine. A nice thing about Pietas is Pietas will do different actions depending on the distance. If it's close to the enemy, it'll do that double sword slam. If instead the enemy is far away, it'll do double laser blast. So I really find that cool how Pietas is going to change up depending on the circumstance. And when you're holding down your Lucent, you can sweep that over to an additional enemy. Build is also great to kill the Red Reaper. I just dodged his attacks and then used Lucent Beam to cook his ass. It worked out very well. And I know we're at a lower game area. These enemies aren't particularly hard. You know, we're not trying to showcase like, look at me blow up low level stuff, because I know someone's going to try and call it out. But what I really want to point out here is just how awesome Lucent can be against like a horde of enemies. So, you know, the first time you come to the shrine, you get over to this bridge. And pretty much all of these open up. There's just hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes. So many enemies trying to hit you at the same time. And this is an instance where Lucent Beam is really going to shine. Just because we're able to just go up and be like, beam! And just sweep through and hit everything. So it is an excellent trash killer. It's super, super good in Umbral to handle the additional... what's the word I'm looking for? I guess just the mob mentality that happens in Umbral where you're being surrounded by enemies. It can very quickly melt through Wither, doing a ton of damage. And on top of that, like honestly, this is unironically, I think my favorite Paladin Sunbro-esque build that I've played in a Souls game. So y'all know me, I mean, as much as I Unga Bunga all the time, I am a very big fan of Faith builds. I tend to do Faith builds a lot, Sunbro type builds. And between the Holy Energy Sword and the giant beam of Holy Light that I can shoot out, and summoning lightning that continually stacks, that I can hit enemies with and stack it at the same time, that's absolutely unreal. And all these things together, I think, makes it a super satisfying build to play. So if you are interested in trying it out, if you're interested in you know, hey, I'm thinking about maybe I want to do Faith. Is Radiance good? Hell yeah, Radiance is good. Radiance is super good. So we're going to wrap this one up here. I know a lot of folks are probably going to ask, hey, what about an agility build or an inferno build? I may do one eventually, but you know, for now at least, now that I've gotten through the walkthrough, that's all recorded and it's ongoing. Those episodes will be up. I think by November 3rd, the series wraps up and I got the build videos done. I'm definitely going to take a little break from the game just because at this point, God, let me see. What am I at now? since launch. It has been, I've clocked 100 hours, so yeah. After 100 hours, I need a little Lord of the Breaks. But yeah, more than likely, I will do an Inferno build at some point. I've actually already started that character. I haven't done much on it, but I think that's going to be a co-op playthrough with a friend. But either way, Paladin, super good build. Definitely try it out. Make sure to follow Exactor Dunmire's questline to get that. All this stuff is covered in the walkthrough. If you're following the walkthrough, you'll eventually end up like this and be a badass anyway. So, thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time.